Hello and welcome back to the Kung Fu book review. Today we are going to be doing Steal My Art by this guy, T.T. Liang, right? Okay. The full title is Steal My Art, The Life and Times of a Tai Chi Master, right? And a Tai Chi master and an old rogue he definitely was. So my overall impression of this book is it is an absolutely great read, but it is not a technical teaching manual of Tai Chi. But it's one of the best books to give you the flavor of what somebody who really lives the Taoist way of life is really like. Because T.T. Liang was just this really special individual, right? And throughout this book, there are a few books where you genuinely crack up, right? You genuinely laugh about how funny it is. And it's the stories and anecdotes, especially the kind of the weird practical jokes that he played on his long-suffering Western, top student, / fool guy for his practical jokes. It's just great. It's just look at this guy, right? Like he has the little twinkle in his eye, right? And I think that's the key thing, is that you will absorb a lot of a kind of a Tai Chi sort of Taoist, way of being and way of feeling about the world, a light sense of humor, not taking things too seriously, going with the flow, but having something really deep and true that's just hidden and a little bit mysterious and out of view from reading about this guy's life. I've never trained in his particular style or system, or even met any of his students, right? Because he's over he was based over in the US whilst he was alive, and so I had a bunch of sort of students in the Pacific Northwest. And again, also his particular style and lineage was something that, because he did things his own way, he also created his own version of the two-person set, two-person sword dance as well. His Tai Chi form he modified so that it could be set to music. All sorts of little interesting innovations and changes, right? He's also one of these guys that was in that generation that he was sort of in the first generation of guys that were involved in the simplification of Tai Chi. So he trained with and knew the guys that knew the old style with all of the, the Fa Jing and the complicated internal body mechanics. So he has that little, the little glimpse of the, the martial content in it. But part of him and sort of that similar generation of the sort of the Chen Manqing generation, where they simplified and shortened the forms to make them more accessible and easier to learn and available to teach in a larger public class. But I think that T.T. Liang had this, he knew what was really going on in terms of the martial arts applications as well, because of the way of his life and his upbringing, where he was involved in, I think he worked in the docks, as a customs officer. So he was involved in some pretty shady stuff before he moved over to the US, and was a sort of a drinker and a fighter. So he had that element of his life, and was still involved in martial arts. I think one of the little factoids that I can tell you about him that, just to sort of sum up who he is when he was in his late 70s, he started learning a sort of internal style of praying mantis kung fu from a teacher who was in his 90s, right? And I think there are a few humans that have got to that stage where they're already an established Tai Chi master, and they've seen something that they thought was, oh, that guy has some cool movement skill or something that I like. I'm going to train with him now, right? I'm going to start learning again. Which, for somebody in their late 70s, I think that's just great, right? He truly was able to act and embrace life in a spontaneous fashion. And really, that's what this book will give you, is a little insight into that way of viewing the world, which I think is sorely missing in this day and age. So, so as I said, this book is not a technical teaching manual. It is about, this guy's life, and you'll absorb a lot about the feel of being a Tai Chi practitioner rather than the actual practice itself. So, what's in the book? So here's the contents page. So basically, he starts off with a brief sort of introduction, a little bit of history about who he is. Also, you set up the prime. These are the classic odd couple, these two, right? Okay, so you've got T.T. Liang, who is this old sort of joker, trickster, type guy. And then you've got Stuart, his number one student, right, who is one of these very serious, try hard, nothing wrong with trying hard, but very, very committed to the monastic style way of life. One of these Western guys that really gets into Asian culture and is very, very serious about it and will meditate and will train hard every day. So they are the classic odd couple, right? His takes life way too seriously, and TT Liang is just there to Zen master style slap him in the face throughout the book. And the anecdotes between these two guys are just adorable and priceless, right? And it's great. So for Stuart, there's great anecdotes in there. He used to be one of these guys that he would sleep sitting up because he would sleep in his meditation position. And TT Liang used to go and, push him over because he was like, this is silly. that you don't have to sleep in a meditation position. It's trying too hard, right? Okay. Sleeping is sleeping and meditating is meditating, right? So, you get the introduction. They set up these two characters. Then you get a biography, stories of him and his early life. Great stories there. His work, when he ran into the Chinese mafia and his work on the docks, his meeting with Yang Chengfu and other Tai Chi teachers, meeting Chen Manqing as well, other guys, and then various other people that he trained with, and moving to New York, right? So that's brilliant and really interesting, right? And if you like the sort of the history of Kung Fu, he touches with some, he's trained with some really top names as well, really good there. Then the next part is the different, so his actual practice, his style, right? So, and unless you're practicing his particular lineage, then this is not particularly useful, right? So because he basically outlines each of his different movements and talks about how it's adapted to music, and you do get the kind of lots of still images for a little part in the middle, right? So it's not so useful, that section, right? So but that's only from pages 83 to 125, and then there is also a little bit at the end which was the guiding principles, which I thought was better, right? So the actual technical instruction, not the worst that I've seen in books, but again, his style and lineage was, not lineage, but his particular form and style is quite unique because he designed it himself. So unless you're doing his system, it's not particularly useful, that section. His 178 posture 2-person dance is quite interesting, just from the history of Tai Chi, because again, it's he pretty much created that from because there are 2-man sets in Tai Chi, but this is one of the sort of first sort of modern simplified ones. So taking the 2-person sort of fast forms like the cannon fist form and the Da Lu, and then translating those into a more simplified version that beginners could learn, I thought was a really useful exercise. And then the best bit of this book is from 127 to 201, which basically to the end of the book. It's just stories of his life, and basically a lot of them him playing practical jokes on his long-suffering student who's living with, called Stuart, and it's great. Like, I won't spoil them all for you. Like, there is a brilliant scene in a bank that is hilarious. He's like a Zen master and it sort of slowly breaks down the armor of this guy, and it's just brilliant seeing the two of them interact. And I think you'll learn a lot about the Tai Chi way of thinking, this Taoist way of thinking, which is it's different to the main Han Confucian culture, and I've realized this over time, that it's basically a counterculture. It's a response to a very main Chinese Confucian sort of legalist culture is very strict and dogmatic, and there's a lot of this is just the way it is. And Taoism is really quite different. And then just the last thing to end on is really the afterword, because this book is written by Stuart, right? So, and it is, it sort of goes through the sort of funny bits, but it ends very touching, right? And it's these guys had a deep relationship that lasted a long time, and it's a beautiful tribute to one of the great masters of, this Taoist movement art, and somebody who really lived this way, which I think is unusual sometimes, you know. So yeah, wonderful book. Definitely a thumbs up, but don't expect to learn practical Tai Chi from it, but do expect to, you know, embrace the life of a lovable old rogue. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so I think he had one other book, which was more on the practical side. I don't have that one. But yeah, let me know what other books you'd like, especially other Tai Chi type books. I've got a long list of proposed ones, but this is definitely one of my preferred non-technical books. Yeah, please do like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to reading more Kung Fu books with you all.